PowerShell scripting, best practices. I guess I really could title this nugget Best Visual Practices, because we're really going to be focusing on making your script more legible and more maintainable by focusing on its visual presentation. In other words, literally just how you format and how pretty your code looks inside your script. Very little of this is going to affect the functionality of your script, but that visual aspect is still terribly important. So I wanted to make sure we talked about it right up front. I'll even show you some examples of awful practices and what you have to go through to fix those things. Now we've got a real simple theme here. Make it pretty. I know sometimes you start talking about best practices and people think about things like, wow, you should use source control. And you should, and we'll talk about that. That is a good practice. But right now we're really going to focus on practices around scripting, making your scripts easier to read, easier to maintain, and easier to follow. And I'm going to start by showing you a pretty bad practice example. We're going to walk through fixing it so that you can kind of experience the pain involved there, thus giving you the encouragement to do it right the first time. And I'm also going to give you several tips for keeping things looking nice and try and help explain why that really gives you some value, why it's worth taking a few extra seconds as you code to make it pretty. Now, I know that as you get coding sometimes, it's super easy to focus a lot on the functionality. And it's super easy to not worry so much about how it's all laid out. You can think to yourself, well, I'll go back and make it look pretty later perhaps. Well, that's actually hard to do. Here's a script. This is a version of the same script that you saw in the previous nugget. And this is the type of thing that a lot of newcomers, and I see my students in class doing this as well, the formatting is really hard to read. For example, PowerShell will break if these little curly brackets don't all line up. In other words, for every opening curly bracket, you have to have a closing curly bracket. And if you've got nested ones, they have to be completely nested. So looking at this, tell me which curly bracket closes the process block. It's a little difficult to tell because this formatting is so awful. Folks will hit a million little white spaces. You know one thing they'll do? They'll do this. Let's see, we'll have another script over here. They'll have a command in here, and they'll have tabbed it in or hit enter or something else, and they'll just copy and paste that over into here without fixing the tabbing, without fixing the indentation. And so everything winds up being all over the place. This will be over here. This will be all the way out here. It's really tough to tell what goes where. So we start by fixing it. First of all, in any construct that involves an opening, the closing, you know what? I'm going to give you two options. Heck with it. Function, this, you can either do it that way, or you can do it that way, but pick one and stick with it. In other words, have your opening and closing at the same character position, the same column. Look all the way over here. I want you to pay attention to something in the ISE for me for a second, because this is kind of important. All the way right there. It tells you what column the cursor is on right now. Yes? Yes, it does. And so your opening and closing should either be on the same column as each other, with the opening on a new line right after whatever it goes with. It's not actually the one I prefer, but a lot of folks like to use it. I think it just takes up too much extra room. Or what you'll see me do, the opening curly bracket goes at the end of the line, and then the closing curly bracket lines up with the beginning of that one. So if we've got an indentation, and in here everything gets indented. Opening, closing. When I'm coding, when I'm actually sitting here typing, and you've probably seen me do this, but might not have realized it, I do exactly what I just did. Now I'm going to call attention to it. Open, enter, close. Then I go back, I hit enter, I indent, and I start typing whatever goes in here. That ensures that I do the opening and the closing together. What I don't do is this. indent, start typing stuff, and then later on remember to come back and close it, because 9 times out of 10 I'll forget. So I don't play, I just open, enter, close, then I go back, hit enter, indent, always indent. Now look at how easy it is to tell what goes with what. That one closes this one. Now the ISE is doing that little bit of highlighting there. That helps too. That closes my if, that closes my for each, that closes the if, because they line up. It's very easy to tell. Now let's say you decide you need to put another in here. Oh man, I forgot my logic is only going to work if I do this. I didn't even have time to talk about what I just did because it's so built into my fingers. Enter tab. I always indent. I always make sure I've done that. It's one button. It's one button press. It's not that expensive. If him equal her open. Now because I intend for this to enclose things that were already there, I'm going to go immediately to where I want the end to be and type it. I always do my closing as soon as I do my opening. And then I'm immediately going to select everything that was in here and tab it inward so that it is properly indented, right? The tab key will do it for you. You don't have to do tab that line, then tab that line. You can highlight a bunch of them and tab them all at once. On the other direction, let's say I decide, oh, you know what? I don't really need this if loop there. I'm going to immediately delete its opening. It's very easy to find its closing because look, that lines up, that lines up. This doesn't line up with anything. Therefore, it must be bad. Notice too, that little red curly or squiggly there, it's saying you've got an extra unexpected closing curly bracket. Go find it. It's that one, delete it, and the red squiggly goes away. Now this is indented too far. Shift tab pulls it back in so everything stays nice, neat, and lined up. Some folks, and I don't mind this, some folks will actually put a little comment along with their closing to help remind them what that's actually closing. And if you want to do that, that's totally fine. So now we need to fix this. For one, I got my closing parenthesis on the wrong line. It goes there. It lines up with the thing that it starts. All of this stuff is inside of a function, so it needs to be indented. I don't know why I got two of these lined up together. That should never happen. And I don't know why I have all this wacky end space. But let's get rid of the white space there. Let's fix that up. See, Shift Tab will pull that line back. So you don't have to, it's not hard to do this. So we'll start back up at the top. The begin looks fine. I don't know why we've got this white space in there. That's ugly. That is white space. Now, you know what? I might put that back in a minute, but let's pull this back in. What I'll usually do is pull it back in to line up with its parent and then indent it. That way I know it's indented exactly one. Now, as it turns out, I think I liked that one line of white space because it sets this aside, and I like that line in between. Sets it aside from kind of the next hunk. This is not lined up correctly. Now it is. And you know what? Sometimes if you can't quite tell, the easiest thing, go all the way back and then tab it in nice even steps. Same thing with this one. I'm not sure if it's all the way there. Nice even steps. Nice even steps. All of this appears to be wasted. And then this, I'm guessing, yeah, it goes with my process block, and that's not where it goes. It would go here to end the process block. And then if we wanted to, we can start adding little comments that tell us what these are for. And that's not a bad idea. And then this one's for the function. So that is a lot more easy to read. And I'll do another little bit of white space there. Just sets that off. If you're going to use white space to set things off, that's fine. Just one line of white space is fine. What I don't always like is when folks will do this. Big blocky sections like this. In a massive script, maybe you want to do that, but look, there's only one actual command here. You know, folks will do this. They'll put a comment, get the WMI object. So you've used 3 lines to tell me that the command get WMI object gets the WMI object. Wow, thanks for clearing that up. I was confused. You don't need to waste space. Another thing I try not to do in my scripts is I try not to let them zoof off to the right-hand side. Now you can hit enter after a pipe character, and you can make this its own little line. And I like to indent the second command, the second line in the command, just to help me remember what's what. Sometimes these lines will get really long. For example, let's say this was Win32 logical disk. And in addition to the computer name, I have a filter in here, drive type equals 3. And you can start to see, maybe I'm going to put a credential in here too, credential administrator. Well, now I've stretched this single command off the right side of the screen. You can't just come in here and hit enter. Watch the color coding in the ISE. If you get used to the color coding, it will tell you when you've done something wrong. Parameters are this dark blue. See how it's gone wacky now? That means it's not going to work. You can't just hit enter in the middle of a command. Some folks will do this. Backtick enter. Notice that my parameter credential is now properly colored, and so they'll indent that. They'll put that here, and they'll sometimes actually do that with every single parameter. And I think this kind of makes a nice lineup. You know, here's the command, here's every single parameter, all nice on one line. There's the pipe that leads to the next command. The only thing I kind of don't like about this is this little backtick character gets tricky. First of all, it's hard to see. It's really easy to miss it. Second, it's an escape character. It's not actually a line continuation character. It'll only work if the next character is a carriage return. Meaning if I put a space in here by accident, I just broke it. Notice that my color coding has gone wacky. And when you're not on the line, it's really, really hard to tell that that's the case. You almost have to click all the way out here to see, oh, there's a character there. I need to delete that. Because the backtick has to be right before a carriage return or it won't work. So I actually don't like to do that. I've gotten away from that. PowerShell gives us a feature called splatting that I'm going to use instead. So we'll call a little variable here params, and we'll create a hash table. Now this hash table is very simply going to be the parameter name and the value I want to give it. And then a semicolon. And I'm going to keep these guys lined up. So I'll come back up here and hit enter. And this will be filter. So I'm just replicating my parameters. Now because this last one is a variable, I don't need to put quotes around it. Now, when you're breaking it down with one of these pairs, this parameter and value pair per line, you don't technically need the semicolons. You can take them out, and some folks will do that. I like to put them there because if somebody accidentally deletes all this up together, the semicolon means it'll still work. If that's not there, see, it gets upset. So I tend to do that, the semicolons regardless. And we'll close everything off that way, but that means I no longer need all these parameters here. Instead, @param. That tells getWMIObject to use those. So we can actually make this kind of neat. Watch this. I'm going to make that WMI param get lined up correctly. We'll make this one select param. And, real quick. Select object. I need to close that or it's not going to work. You'll notice I've been typing prop there. It's actually property, right? So since I'm going to be doing this in a hash table like this, I really want the full parameter name there. So property is going to equal name. Oops. And then we can @select param, and we change the variable name on this other one to WMI param. And now we can actually pull those together onto a single line. So this trick of splatting is one way of keeping all of your data. Sorry, I'm obsessive about these things lining up. I'm not sure why I let them get out. out of whack here. Uh, you can get these things nice, neatly lined up so that they don't stretch off the side of the screen. You can use this splatting technique, so when you've got a lot of parameters, you can have them all nicely lined up, one per line, so that they're easy to read, and then you just use them and execute them right there. And this is one of the things I really like, is keeping things nice, very simple to read, very easy to review. It makes my script a lot easier to debug. Now it's very simple for me to see what goes inside what pairs off with what parameters go with what things. I can read everything on the screen, even if I'm working in side-by-side mode, right? I don't have to scroll much because I've got everything kind of compacted over to the left as much as possible. Now, the last best practice as you start getting into scripting is set up some kind of source-controlled repository. Have a place where you can store your scripts, that they'll be backed up, and that you'll have access to previous versions, so that if you mess something up, you can go back and get the last version that worked. Some administrators will use SharePoint for that. Set up a document library, makes it, and you're not going to run your scripts from there, obviously, but it's a place you can check in changes and go check out if you want to use it. There's open source software control like SVN. You can use Git for something like that. Git's real easy to use. That's nice. In a Microsoft shop, you might well have some developers who are using Visual Studio Team Foundation Server, TFS. That can provide you with source control as well. Microsoft's SourceSafe can do so. Older product, no longer supported, but you might still have it. There are third parties. Sapien makes a product, for example, called ChangeView, which is a very simple to use source control mechanism. Whatever you do, act like a professional. Pretend that your scripts are going to be used to accomplish business processes, which, by the way, they are, and keep those scripts in a source-controlled repository of some kind. Well, so there you go. The goal, again, keep it pretty. Use things like splatting, which we've looked at. Use your line breaks carefully. Indent your code, for heaven's sake. Keep things looking attractive. It really, really will help you prevent simple typos, simple bugs that become very, very, very vexing. Learn to use the color coding in the ISE. Recognize when it's wrong. All of those things will make your scripts easier to maintain, easier to read, easier to debug, easier to not have bugs in the first place. There's really, really no downside. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.